I still haven't switched to Premiere's new color tool, but today that changes live. If you're new here, then welcome. My name is Adrienne and I make tutorials on video editing. And if you, for some reason, didn't know, Adobe announced that they are going to be getting rid of Lumetri color and they're going with something called color mode. It's still in beta, so we can all play with it and give feedback. And I have only tried it like 3 times. So today we're going to be diving into a piece of B-roll footage that I have and experimenting with really using it and not just sort of taking a tour through it. I did go on Adobe and I took some notes on their suggestions for how to use color mode. And so we're going to dive into this together. And now let's get into it. All right, everyone, deep breath together. Okay, I have Premiere Beta open. I have just one clip here on the timeline. I am going to move the playhead just down to here so that the sun is behind her. She's not quite so blown out. And you can see I'm already in color mode. So I have the tools down here ready to work with. I have Adjust selected under Clip, and this is what we're going to be working with today. Now, according to Adobe's website, they want you to start with the color and contrast controls, and they recommend doing everything there in global first. So I'll show you. Global is down here. I want to start under contrast. They say that working under contrast can create kind of a similar S-curve. So I'm going to click and we can see this HUD or HUD graph come up. If I'm looking, I can see that our highlights are peaking and that pivot point is supposed to be like the middle of your dynamic range. I'm going to lower the contrast just a touch, just to bring the highlights down a little bit. I'll go down, I'll click on exposure. Exposure is vertical and black level is horizontal. I'm going to bring the exposure down again just a little bit. I am still getting used to reading those. I'm so used to reading Lumetri scopes. I really understand the information that I'm getting from them, but that just comes with practice. Practice, watching more stuff from Adobe, watching other stuff from some creators who I think worked with Adobe to develop this system. So it's a little it's a little annoying right now, but that just takes practice and time. All the information is there in those graphs. We all just have to learn how to read them. Let's come down to temperature. And this eyedropper does do white balance. And so I'm going to click on that and it does it automatically. So I'm going to come over to this. That was not too bad. That got rid of quite a bit of the very warm yellow color. I think that looks quite a bit better. And that was just as easy as it is in Lumetri color. So balance allows you to rebalance red, blue, and green. So I'm going to move my mouse down towards blue, see if I can bring that, and down towards green, and just bring those up a little bit. And then still on global, I'll come to saturation. And I will, if I raise my mouse up, I'll increase the saturation just a touch there. Not a lot. So now let's get off of global. They recommend then going in and isolating the shadows and highlights and making tweaks still in color and contrast, but in those specific areas of your image. So first, let's look at, this one is highlights. I'm going to click highlights. So let's click into exposure. And the highlights look pretty good. I'll move them down a little bit. I'm going to go into my shadows here. And I'm just going to make sure, I'm going to go into temperature, and I just want to make sure that my shadows are nice and cool toned. I'm going to click here, and I want them to be a little bit more blue. I'm gonna cool them off just a hair. Let's go back to those highlights. And I'm gonna take some of the color out of just the highlights. I'm gonna desaturate them so we're not getting any funny colors. But I do want to make sure that my shadows actually have nice saturation, that they're not looking too gray and washed out. I find myself doing a little bit more eyeballing with color than I feel comfortable with, right? We talk a lot about how Lumetri scopes are there to make sure that what you are doing is within the correct range. I thought it was really easy to switch back and forth between the idea of global highlights and shadows. And also, I know when you click on highlights, it isolates the highlights and you make changes. And then something that is nice is the program does sort of automatically blend the highlights and the midtones together. So any changes that you're making there are really seamlessly integrated into the rest of the tones of the image. And that is something that is really nice, feels really seamless, and I'm enjoying that aspect of color mode. So now let's move down into color shift. Hue shift is what you would use if we wanted to adjust skin tone. And so let's try that first. Let's go down. If you see these colors, if I hover over each of these pre-selected colors, you can see what is highlighted in the program monitor. I think this looks like it's most of her skin tone. So let's start here and let's go into hue shift. I'm going to click and I'm going to see that what is selected, the color that is selected is that piece of pie that you see on the upper left-hand side, sort of around the red. And you can see the skin tone line there. And I want to shift this down. So if I move the mouse to the left, that's going to isolate a little bit more of just her skin tone. It's not going to be such a wide color selection. And then I'm going to move the mouse down in order to try to straddle that skin tone line. And that looks pretty good. I think that worked nicely. With the same color selected, I'm going to go into luminance shift. I'm going to click this and I'm going to bring it down just a hair. I don't want to do too much here, but I just want to add a little bit of richness that may have been lost. Finally, let's get into this saturation shift. I want to up the saturation of her blue sweatshirt, of her blue shirt, and the sky. Now, if I hover over the blue, you can see it doesn't really get much of her t-shirt. So I'm going to use the eyedropper. I'm going to click here, and we can see that now that's what is selected. I'm going to go into saturation shift, and I'm going to move the mouse up, and we're just going to bump it up a little. Yeah, that looks nice. What about the sky then? Let's do a little bit of a saturation bump on the sky. And then I'm interested in the green grass as well. I'm going to click that, go to saturation shift. We don't want to get too bright. Okay, I'm going to move the playhead to the beginning of the timeline and we can watch it and see what we think. I think that looks pretty nice. I'm going to go over to the Edit tab and then come over to Color Effect in Effect Controls, and I just want to turn it off. So this is what we started with, and it's definitely improved. I think I may have fallen victim a little bit to oversaturation. And I mentioned this before, I do like how when you can isolate parts of the image, whether that's color, highlights, or shadows, how color mode blends your changes with the rest of the image. It it seems really nice to me. I think one thing that's really important to note here in going through this process is that my understanding of color correction is what made this tool reasonably usable fresh out of the gate. Like I said, I've only used it, I think, 3 times before recording this today. So I am brand new. I'm a newbie to color mode. And what I know and understand about color correction is what made it like really pretty easily usable, but it's really building on fundamental principles. Those things don't change, right? Addressing your dynamic range, addressing exposure, white balance, not getting too saturated, adjusting skin tones. Those things aren't different just because the interface looks a little bit different. And so if you can practice those fundamentals, even if it is in Lumetri color right now, before color mode is released to everyone, that is not time wasted. That will make the transition to this product all the more easy for everyone. So regardless of whether you are already practicing in color mode or if you're just hanging on to Lumetri color until they take it away from us, which I mean, I'm still using Lumetri color. I'm not working in Premiere Beta right now. So I think that's totally fine if you are. If you want to practice those fundamentals, I do have a workshop, Fix the Color First, and it'll teach you how to identify and correct color in your footage. And it's a simple process and the steps don't change. So they don't change from Lumetri to color mode. It's all the same foundational principles. And you can find that link in the description box. So my honest first impression, and this is coming from someone who does not use DaVinci Resolve. I work in Premiere, I edit in Premiere, I do all of my color in Lumetri color. So coming from that perspective, it's promising. It feels familiar and also not familiar. And so we'll just have to wait and see what they do with all of our feedback and how it looks when it is finally released in Premiere for all of us to start using. If you thought this video was helpful, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, I'd love to see you back, so please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.